Hey everyone, Pete Comeau here from Phocuswright, Managing Director at Phocuswright. So we are a travel research company focused on the intersection of digital and travel. We also produce conferences, another part of our business. We're just back from Phocuswright Europe in Barcelona in mid-June. And we have Focus Wire, which is where we cover the daily happenings of travel technology and startups and innovation. So I am super excited to be here today. Bruce?
Pete, thanks for joining us on the 43rd show of Experience This. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Pete and I go way, way back. We worked together for a long time and have had a lot of fun together skiing and biking and doing other things as well. So looking forward to just having fun talking travel.
Hey everyone, I'm Lori Timoney with Go City, and I'm very excited to have you here today, Pete. Looking forward to talking about all things travel and maybe a little bit of digging in on some of the themes from your recent conference. So yeah, let's kick it off.
So let's kick it off. We try to talk mostly about in-destination experiences on the show. At Phocuswright, that's a slice of what you all talk about. As you said, you're at that intersection of digital and travel. Give us an idea of what happened in Barcelona. Unfortunately, Lori and I both weren't able to make it. Christian, our other co-host, was there, but he's now in Albania, so he's not online. Give us some of what you saw, what you noticed at Phocuswright Europe that only was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so I think first off, there's still a ton of optimism across the industry. Travel, broadly speaking, is still one of those industries that is doing quite well as we kind of leave the pandemic behind. And actually, as we kicked off the event, we like to share some of our research, and this is the last year that we're going to have the 2019 bar and the 2020 bar, which goes from here to here. So now we're going to leave 2019 behind. We're going to stop talking about pre-pandemic comparisons, and we're just going to look at the growth of the industry as we move ahead. And as I said, the industry is growing quite well. There was a lot of optimism across all categories. And Bruce, like you said, we don't cover just experiences. Is certainly a part of what we do, but we look at the broader industry. We look at it from a global basis. And I mean, Barcelona in mid-June, like it's not a bad place to be. And I think people were pretty optimistic and happy and excited to be there.
What were some of the key themes though? Great to hear about your numbers. So let me just go back there for a second, because I'm sure Douglas is looking at the same thing from an arrival perspective. Are you going to start at 22? Is that where you'll start then? And
well, we'll start at 21, but we'll kind of use that certainly not as a growth comparison, but really as the low point. But I think from a numbers perspective, we're certainly starting to see some more normalization.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, we can't keep up the same growth that we saw as we went from a very dark place in 2020 back to, much more normalized growth rates. The digital side of the market, and I think, your industry benefited a lot from this, is still super strong. And I think really it was helped in some ways during the pandemic because people were forced into digital channels. People that hadn't used, Uber Eats and DoorDash and other, delivery services were forced to learn how to use that. And, we're seeing adoption of digital channels continue to accelerate across the industry.
So what were, if you had to pull out just some of the main themes that happened at the conference? And for those who don't know, the Phocuswright conference, there's one in the US every fall, there's one in Europe every spring, and they are the preeminent conferences for travel, tech, and innovation across the entire travel spectrum, travel being the second or third largest industry in the world by global GDP. There's nothing like the Phocuswright conference to get the industry leaders together, the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world that are focused on travel together. So it's, if you can afford it, get there. Sure.
So as far as key themes go, so of course, there was a lot of discussion around AI. I think, we kind of think about the Forrester hype cycle as we see these new technologies come onto the market. There's often this wave of crazy hype. With AI, it's just been incredible to follow, because it seems like every week there's a new release of GPT-4o or Gemini, and there's just so much momentum behind it that we haven't really seen that period of disillusionment, which generally comes after you get this massive hype. I think people are a little more interested in seeing real use cases. So it's not just look at the fun stuff that you can do to write a speech or to edit PowerPoint. It's really like, how is this impacting our industry, and what are the opportunities with AI? And we had some investors, Lori, we were just talking about this before we went on air. The investors were talking about, you can't just launch an AI travel startup. That's not going to be good enough, because first off, it's going to be relatively easy to replicate, because they're all using the same models. Or, there's going to be less difference between the models as they continue to evolve. And it's really the dominant models that are going to continue to rise to the top. It's that mid to back office use cases of,
Exactly.
How do you streamline all these emails that a travel management company gets on the corporate side? They're getting thousands of flight, change and cancellation notifications. Avi from Travel Perk was on stage, and he was just talking about how he used to just hire people to look at emails and to analyze whether it was urgent or it could just kind of go into the queue. And now that is just, it's easy to put in technology, which is powered by AI, to really help automate that stuff. And I think we're starting to see more of those real use cases on the back end. The front end, we see the fancy chat bots and that conversational interface that I forget who mentioned it, but he said, "Oh, it's PR essentially is what it is." It's people like to kind of play around with it, but the real value of AI, we're really starting to see
I wish we had that mid-level. Remember at Moguls, we had like 10 people. That's all they did all day was read emails and decide which ones the salespeople like you. That was crazy. Lori, what have you seen as like some of, every conference has the AI sessions, although also typically AI comes into every session as well. What have you seen as like the really relevant use cases so far?
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned, some of the investors, Pete, that we're talking about, or actually, let me back up. You mentioned that you get sort of this hype whenever there's a new thing happening in the market, and you haven't really seen that kind of die down yet. And I think I read today that something like 62% of companies are now using AI in their back office in some way, shape, or form. So it's really taken on such a life of its own because it is useful, because people are finding uses for it. And I mean, I think that obviously, to your point, just organizing things. I think that organizing emails, you can throw a report into ChatGPT 4o and say, summarize this for me. Bam, it's done. You can take your transcript from your calls and have it summarized, and then actually, have it your schedule aligned so that, it helps you kind of organize your time. Obviously, the customer service thing is huge, and that might be in the form of chatbots, for instance, which is something that, that lots of businesses are starting to engage in as well. I think financially, there's going to be, the accounting piece of this. There's going to be revenue reports and things like that will be 100% made a little bit easier, simpler by the use of AI. I think the back office stuff really is where the huge value in it is right now. But I do think the personalization aspect of it is going to become more and more relevant, and actually is become more and more relevant as companies start looking at how do they differentiate themselves and what do they do with the customers they have. I mean, somebody like an Expedia, for instance, Expedia just launched their Romy app. And, they're obviously hoping they're just going to have a ton of data from their customers and will be able to personalize their experience and offer them, even an even better experience. So, but I'd have to say, just out of the gate, the back office stuff to me is probably where the real value is right now, or at least where it's showing up, I should say.
Yeah,
that show up on stage, Pete, and in conversation.
We do these 5 minutes of fame sessions, Bruce. You may remember from your days back at Phocuswright, where we select interesting companies that are really, forward looking. And we had Ricky Vittoria, who was the founder of 30 Seconds to Fly. You may have heard that name from the past. So it was a old school chat bot, I suppose, now using traditional AI. And he was acquired by Amex GBT to kind of head up their AI, their AI practice. And now he's launching a new business called S2.E13, which is kind of, evolved and now using Gen AI to empower customer service agents and make them 70% more efficient. So they can, get through calls quicker. There's obviously a routing mechanism when a request comes in. Maybe it comes in through a traditional chat bot, and it can be serviced either through an agent or through just a chat interface. So I think the empowerment of customer service is really an easy use case. You mentioned personalization. I looked through our research library, and the first time we started talking about, Douglas might have written this report, like it was 14 years ago. Personalization is finally here in the industry, and it's not. And there's a lot of reasons why we haven't quite gotten there yet. And to your point, Lori, I think Gen AI could help us, because it's a little bit easier to get to that intent now than it used to be. We had a session on digital ID at the conference, which the technology is there to really facilitate digital ID, which basically means, you've got a wallet and you're able to kind of pick and choose who gets your information. So if your flight gets delayed and your hotel, your check-in time has passed, the information flows from airline to hotel, and that becomes much more seamless. So I think, and the hotel could offer you a spa service or something for your time, and that sort of level of service can really be enhanced by just more personal access to your data.
Well, that's not even personalization as much as it's personal service.
Personal service, right?
Yeah, right. Because personalization, our last session, Lori, when Arancis was with us, and she pulled out the word modes, and I was like, wait, what did you say? Because who am I, right? Like I'm 10 different people depending on who I'm traveling with and where I'm traveling. So how are you going to personalize to me unless you know which of my modes I'm in at that point, which is always going to be a challenge no matter how big Gen AI gets.
Yeah, and also, as we know, people travel 2 to 3 times a year. Right. So it's not something they do every day.
I get a ton of data.
Right. I just went to California with my kids, and if I was on Expedia, they might have thought, oh, they want to go to a beach and just sit at a resort. But no, my daughter is thinking about college, and we actually wanted to stay at a few different properties. And there's no way that I would have gotten a personalized itinerary because they just don't, it's so hard to get to
button. That. I'm on college tour.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think that, the travel industry has had personalization to a very small degree with like business, right? So business travelers, they go to the same hotel over and over and over again. They show up, hello, so-and-so, here's your room ready. This is your key. And by the way, we left the drink you like on your table. Yes, you can do that when it's, face to face and you understand a customer, and it's really all about understanding your customer, right? And I think the problem with what we've had available is simply that there's just too many people, right? On a wider scale. How do you do that on a wider scale? And that's probably what all of the biggies that are, using AI are 100% aiming for. That's what Expedia is aiming for with Romy.
Well, right. And Christian, who couldn't join today, the last session of the
You can
conference,
say anything you want about him. Go ahead.
was a debate, and Christian obviously sided on AI as going to take over the world. But Christian's AI bots know a lot about him, and as AI, as we continue to advance through this AI journey, and I think we're pretty bullish that agents is kind of the next step in this journey, where you'll have an agent that will make, kind of actually do things on your behalf. And the more the agent knows about you, the more personalized that action will be. And I think that's coming relatively quickly. It probably won't be great early on, but it'll get better and better and better real quickly. And that's maybe where we're going from a personalization standpoint.
I agree, and I agree because I listen to Christian as much as I do, right? He's drilled things into us, and the one that I will say yes to is the agent. I say no to the trip planner. I say personalization is going to be hard, but if you can really give me an agent that understands me and my modes, because I can say I'm in this mode, then it'll get there, right?
Yeah.
He has recommended one to me that I started using. It's Layla. Have you heard of that one? Layla.
I have. Yeah.
A lot of people were having success with that. So I said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And it's actually pretty good. I'd have to say it's one of the better ones that I've seen. The one thing, the flight thing I think is a challenge for these, AI assistants. And this particular one definitely presented options that I thought were decent ones, but they didn't give you the breadth of options you would have had if you had, gone on Skyscanner and just search for your flights.
Wasn't that a Paul English thing?
I think it's different though. Layla was Lola. It was Lola. Lola was the business that he launched. It was more like empowering technology to empower travel agents to
it's an interesting one though, but I mean in one I actually I have not booked anything with it. Let me just say that I have only done some exploration.
Well, remember, you do have a 24-hour cancellation window in case it just sends you off the rails.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that was interesting though, another thought from the conference is, so we do this pitch event on our stage, and the companies that we select to present. So we had a kind of a blockchain based hotel resell tool, which I'm not sure how big that market is. I think it's an interesting proposition. Blockchain has totally taken a back seat now to AI, as we know. But that was a little more kind of new age technology. But then there was Visa on the stage. There was ConnexPay, like kind of these B2B payment companies that are still solving real problems. But the company that won the People's Choice vote is called 123 Compare Me. And what they do is they create a dashboard for hotels to basically analyze how the OTAs are selling their rates. And it's basically their direct rate, and then here's what Expedia is selling it at, here's what Booking's selling it at, here's what Agoda is selling it at. And it's kind of like a really basic audit tool, and that was the winner. So we're still in this industry challenged by some of the stuff that is just going to be there.
Hasn't STR been doing that for decades?
Well, that's more like that's more, kind of rate comparisons across different hotels. This is more,
Cross hotels.
channels. This is
channel.
more
Okay.
across channels. So,
This
helping
is
you
the
manage the
100%
different
needed.
channels.
I mean, I know that, well, I've talked to Christian actually about that, and I know that he's talked to other businesses about developing that tool, which obviously be using AI. But there's major attractions out there, right? Big, huge theme parks that are always monitoring what people are selling their product for, that have to be doing that, even, in our space, Bruce, not just hotels.
For sure. And we had a breakout or a roundtable session on experiences, and one of the big topics was dynamic pricing. That's a big topic in your space, and it's obviously a challenge, but it's just one of those topics that has been there for a while. It's, we're kind of moving gradually forward as we get more digital and more savvy. And I think, we talk a little bit about sustainability, and I think the experiences industry can certainly play a big role in helping travelers choose times of days that aren't as busy. So it's more kind of using rate and using kind of yield management to kind of direct people to a place where they can kind of enhance their experience.
Yeah. I don't think that the attractions are thinking about this from a sustainability point of view.
They're not.
From revenue. I mean, that's
for sure.
Management. Yeah.
Right. But
go ahead, Lori.
It's one of those things where the travel industry, it's just got so many layers, right? So dynamic pricing is great when you sell B2C. Like, that's it. Cool. You can adjust your website, your pricing, whatever, however way you want to. Once you start reselling that product, unless you plan on being integrated and, having an API that can actually accept dynamic pricing, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. So you do limit yourself in some ways. If you think you're going to get all your business from B2C, great. But most companies do not have that.
Yeah.
They can't get all their business through B2C. So they frankly have to adapt to some degree and consider, okay, here's my seasonal price here, or here's my midweek price here, like do variable pricing versus dynamic. I still think it's a long way away before we're going to see dynamic pricing across all travel. Like, I just think that travel is so complicated. I mean, look at our business, Bruce, like how many companies still aren't even online? Like, they still don't have the ability to book online. I don't know what that number is anymore, but I'm sure you do.
Well, it depends what part of the world, right? It's very different depending on where in the world. So you want to say US, it's probably 60% are online in our business and experiences, right?
They're online?
Yeah.
60%.
That are connected, that are like fully connected.
So there's still 40% that aren't.
That aren't, if you look at all the way to the small guys.
Yeah.
That might be low. One
of the things that I enjoyed was listening to Rod Cuthbert.
Yes.
He's a very interesting guy to listen to.
Rod is the founder of Viator, for those who don't know.
And one of the little nuggets he said that interested me was he said he was not, or he wishes he didn't sell to TripAdvisor. That's what he said. He wishes he didn't sell because he felt like TripAdvisor is just kind of big daddy. We're going to do what we want with the business, and that's it. And he just felt as though it didn't end up in the right hands, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That's seller's remorse.
Yes.
And it's also, who else would have given him X $100 million he got back then, other than TripAdvisor, or I don't know, like whether there was an auction to buy it. So Rod, who should you have sold it to?
Oh, no, believe me, he did mention that he appreciated the money.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He definitely did. But yeah, Rod is fantastic to listen to. For those of you who haven't seen that session, we have it recorded and we have it on our YouTube channel. But he's very passionate about certain topics. And he and Chris Hemmeter was the interviewer. So Chris is a close friend of Phocuswright. He runs Their Ventures, which is a travel specific VC. And one of the interesting topics that they were talking about was search and the potential of search being really at risk with these AI models developed, where you can just get a real-time answer, at the snap of your fingers. Of course, Google controls the search market, and Google is going to play a big role in the future of AI. So I'm not sure it's going to disintermediate Google, but it's really interesting to hear Rod and Chris talk about, the potential of search being really disrupted in this new
Really
world.
disrupted. Yeah, we had a show on that. It was great. Laura, you were on that show, right? With Brennan from Pollock and
But interestingly
Jeanette
enough,
from NYC.
Rod felt that the big guys were going to be the big guys. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't feel that anybody was going to come in and take over from TripAdvisor or Expedia or Booking, that they had the money and they had
they have the talent, they have the money, they're gonna figure it out. And I think I tend to side with Rod there, that the ones with the big resources, and that's why the investors were talking about some hesitancy in investing in OTAs, because once you've got these massive OTAs that are kind of controlling the ecosystem, it's really hard. But you look at a company like Airbnb, and they kind of recreate, they almost created a different type of model. And they're now, certainly their market cap is significantly larger than Expedia. So it's interesting to see how during these challenging times in the market, like COVID was, there's going to be a few companies that in 5 years that we look back and say, wow, that company was founded during the pandemic, and they've just created this new market. And I think that's the fun part about our industry, is while maybe one of these leading investors is like, I'm going to avoid that part of the category, there will be companies that evolve that nobody knew, and certainly they will get some investment to help them really scale up. But that's part of this industry that keeps us always on our toes.
Yeah, and we only have a few more minutes, and you just brought up investment, et cetera. And yesterday it was announced that Civitatis just raised $50 million, or euros probably. Civitatis, for those who don't know, we were talking about niche OTAs. They're a niche OTA, but their niche is the Spanish-speaking market. That's a pretty big niche. So they're not really just vertical, they are a horizontal OTA of experiences for the Spanish-speaking market. They are going to diversify to the Italian-speaking market, French-speaking market, things like that as well. They're using this money apparently to go much more into LATAM, where they're already doing a great job in Latin America. Thoughts on that raise? You familiar enough with it, Lori, just for starters, since you know Civitatis quite well, I'm sure.
And Bruce, you say niche, and I think they've got 10 million customers. Certainly not like they found a nice large niche, and they've obviously focused a lot on Spanish-speaking countries, but they're really a powerhouse.
Yeah,
And I really love watching their growth, to be fair. Because I pretty much started working with them right out of the gate, and so they were very, very small. Obviously they do curate, so they spend a fair amount of time, not selling everything, but really understanding what their customers want, which is like just going back to what we were talking about, Bruce. They are, they're very careful about their content to make sure that it's, properly translated, etc. Their tours are Spanish-speaking tours, so they're not going to be just, kind of, they walk the walk, so to speak. They're definitely getting more into the B2B space. So you mentioned Spanish, but they're really growing in South America, and Portuguese is, another market there, 100% Portuguese speaking as well, going after that market in a big way. And so I think they're probably going to use the money to just continue to grow somewhat organically, not kind of the same exact model as, somebody like a Get Your Guide. But as you said, Pete, I mean, what a niche to choose. Latin America, like how many, I think I wrote it down actually, the amount of, or the 750 million Spanish speakers worldwide. So, they definitely have a decent sized market to go after. But I'm thrilled. I'm looking forward to watching their growth, I should say.
Yeah, and so Vitruvian led the round, and Vitruvian has a ton of history in the travel space. And I think the investment landscape is really interesting right now, because obviously interest rates are really high and valuations were outrageous before the market came crashing down. So there's a lot of scrutiny in the investment space, and the companies that are really getting the lion's share of investment are those companies that are showing traction and that they're really growing already. Investors are a little less willing to take those big bets, but that'll shake itself out. I think we see these different market cycles, and we're now in a high interest rate cycle where you've got to be able to realize a solid return, or that investment
to cover the gap,
exactly,
right?
To cover the spread.
Let's pick on our friend Christian again, since he's not here.
Okay, I'm always game for that.
So when the news came out, I think it was yesterday, I don't remember now, maybe it was 2 days ago, that they raised 50 million, and at Arrival we wrote a big article on it. We had info from the CEO of Suditatis, and Christian's reply was like, why only 50 million? Like that's not a good message that they only raised 50 million. That he's just a contrarian. He just likes to be a contrarian. We know that. What's your guys' opinion on that?
I mean, I think Lori mentioned it. Like it's a profitable business. They've got a high growth rate. It's not that it's not that they need, $200 to $300 million to go out and kind of expand their market. Maybe we'll see that coming up, but they're making really good progress right now. I think we'll probably see this help them continue to expand maybe a little bit quicker into some of these Spanish and Portuguese speaking markets, where I don't expect they're going to take this money and completely kind of go off and do something different and unique. I think it's more about, how do they use this to really accelerate that organic growth that they're already realizing right now.
I totally agree. I think that they are going to be using the money to really blow it out in South America if they can. They're growing really quickly there, and the Brazilian market is growing like crazy in the US right now. And I know I'm sure I totally agree with you. I think that's what they're using it.
So Latin America, you think is really a big part of it?
Well, Latin America is their audience, but I think South America.
Well, their audience is Spain, right?
No, their audience is Spanish-speaking countries. So basically Mexico, they're working hard in obviously Spain, yes, but they're also in other markets that are Spanish-speaking countries. So they just want to grow further into those Spanish-speaking countries. So definitely growing beyond Spain for sure.
Okay, we're out of time.
Yeah.
I'll have to hold on my story about the sphere for later.
I can't wait to hear that
one. But let's just do what's going to happen next October, November. October at the Arrival event, November at the Phocuswright event. What's going to be different than where we are today? You get this is a little bit of a speed round. If I have to put you on the spot, Pete, What's next?
Well,
It could be just more AI, right? Like
no,
what's
I mean, this is, as we all know, this is an election year. We don't need to talk politics in this discussion, but I think there's going to be a little bit of unease in the market anyway, and it'll be interesting to see how that impacts people's
Oh my God.
decisions.
When is the Phocuswright conference?
November
Yeah.
19th.
What's election day?
Well, they still may be counting votes at that point.
And your conference is in Arizona?
Yes.
Might be like the swing state that matters.
It could very well be. But I think it certainly, AI will certainly be, will continue to be the discussion. Hopefully we have more concrete use cases, and that's, as we're thinking about the theme of our conference, we will be talking about agents. We will be talking about kind of this new age of travel. Our sister brand Wit is, they've got their event in Singapore, and we try to kind of pull our themes together. They're talking about the next generation of travel. Humans is always a big part of Wit's themes, and that just speaks to their founder and managing director Suhoon. She always will integrate a human touch into it. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of we've seen some interesting technology companies that are coming in and applying to be on our stage, and it is some of those companies that are starting to find unique use cases with AI, not just AI, but with AI to really help them accelerate to market. And that's one thing Christian talks a lot about is AI is just accelerating. You don't need to have 10 engineers anymore. You can really get something off the ground really quickly. So we're starting to see some really interesting stuff.
Laura, you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Pete has a really good view into, what is potentially down the road, at least for, new businesses coming on board. And I think you're 100% right that we're just going to have more AI use cases, and there'll be more companies that are going to be coming up that will have pretty cool stuff, that's another AI use case. So I think we'll definitely see a lot more of that. I think that search was just going to continue to be a conversation. Google, what's happening with Google is going to be another. I mean, I'm sure by the time your conference even rolls around, Bruce, there's going to be more happening with Google that people will be talking about. And I do think the next generation is going to continue to be the topic. I mean, it seems like it's really becoming more and more of a topic. I mentioned the McKinsey report to you and Christian the other day. There's a lot in there about kind of next generation and how they're finding travel, and the fact that they're spending like 25% of their budget on travel. Like, they don't care if they have credit card debts up the yazoo. They just want to travel. So I think some of that stuff is probably going to be be on topic. And for, let's see, when yours is what, the end of September?
First week of October.
Yeah, so that's going to be right before election. And it'll be interesting to see what will happen over the summer, because right now all the buzz is, are people up? Are they down? Are they flat? What's happening? So by that point, we'll have like
we'll know the results. We just did a huge research study on that. So we'll have that. You didn't mention that the young people, they're searching differently, right? I mean, they're searching TikTok Insta stories. That's how they're finding their travel. And that's a huge element. I don't know if that was a big story at Phocuswright or not, Pete.
Yeah, it was. And we had a fresh company on stage. Actually, two companies, one B2C company that's really using a very kind of visual scrolling display. It's not your typical dates and destination. It's just surfing through interesting destinations, and so kind of a new way to discover travel. And then somebody that represented himself as the OnlyFans for travel, and we said, you need to like reposition that statement a little bit,
right?
But he had a really interesting kind of UI around how influencers could could use his platform to help sell, monetize travel experiences.
Oh, another one of those. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so obviously we've seen a few of those, but I think, it's to Lori's point, it's all about search, and the next generation searches differently.
Well, if you can connect it all, like Mount is a really good example. We had Maddie from Mount on a few sessions ago, and she just put out a new thing with her 170,000 influencers and how they
Yeah.
direct to the properties that are on that platform that she's using that are connected to experiences. And, she's got this whole thing going on. So anyway, great show. Thanks for coming on, Pete. No one knows how last minute notice we gave you.
You need to give me 5 minutes, Bruce. I can come on and
He's
talk.
like, yeah, I'll call Pete.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I knew you weren't traveling, so we really appreciate you coming on and participating and experience this, and we'll catch you again soon.
Great.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lori. I'll talk to you later.